At Rogers Arena in Vancouver tonight, the Canucks put the brakes on a 3-game home losing skid. The president and general manager of the franchise, Mike Gillis, sits in now on After Hours. Nothing like a win over the red-hot Stanley Cup champions to cure what ails you. What went right tonight?
I think our battle was a lot better tonight than it's been the last couple of weeks. It's really the first 60-minute game I think we played all season. So I know a lot of teams are going through the same thing where there's really big ebb and flow in the games, and tonight we battled a lot harder and competed for 60 minutes.
You think the fact that you finally had a team that hadn't played since Tuesday, you got a good couple of days of practice for your coach, and it looked like they had a lot more energy too, didn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we had a road trip that was awful. We had a bunch of people with the flu, and to get some rest in this kind of schedule is really beneficial.
I'm just saying on that note then, how do you look at your team and know what you have when you're dealing with those kind of factors and the condensedness of the practice time and your schedule to see what you have?
Well, you don't have practice time, which is unfortunate, but you just have to believe in guys. They've done it before, they've been there before, we've added some size now, and you just got to believe in them and let them go with it.
All right, Mike, you knew you weren't coming on the show to not talk about your goaltending, so why don't we get right to it? Here is a tweet from Strombone1. Can you ask Mr. Gillis if there's any chance I get an extension?
I'm not sure who Strombone1 is.
Well, let's assume it's Roberto Luongo. He's never admitted to it. Well, actually, he sort of did on this program a couple of weeks ago. So
he's going to have to play a lot better to get an extension. So.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. I mean, Roberto's doing great. He's a great guy. He's a great member of this team, and Twitter has suited him very well.
Do you follow Strombone1?
Well, I don't look at Twitter a whole lot, but everybody tells me about the stuff he's up to, so I end up following it, either looking at it or someone tells me about it.
How important do you think Twitter has been for him to reach out to the fans and help them understand the person he is?
Well, he's, everyone in that room knows what he's like, and so now this is an extension of that, and I think it's great for him. He's a wonderful guy. He's got a great sense of humor, and it's been a novel way for him to show people what he's really like.
What's the last funny tweet you sent out?
Has there been
I'm not even allowed to send tweets out. So people send them out for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure you want to do much of that.
No. I like the battles you guys get into, media, maybe not you guys, but media guys get into these battles with 12-year-olds in their mother's basement. I find that pretty funny.
Well, that's the thing about Twitter, but that's a whole different show. Alain Vigneault clearly is managing the goaltending situation as though he believes both goaltenders will be here all season long. Are you managing from the same position?
Well, when you have really good players, it's hard to part with them, and until we get something that we think is going to be helpful for us and provide us with some future players, I mean, we're perfectly content with these two guys, and they give us a chance to win every night, and it's as long as they play well, as long as they're happy, we're going to continue with it, and then if something happens that can improve our team, we're going to take a hard look at it.
That's really the key point there, isn't it, Mike, in the sense that if you are looking to make a deal or there's something there, you really feel you need something that's going to improve your team, not just be a salary dump.
No, of course not. I mean, this is an all-star player, and you don't give those guys away, and it's a very condensed season, and to have two guys with energy playing every night is a pretty good benefit for our team. So if something comes our way that we like, we'll act upon it. If not, we're going to continue with this.
Tweet from Ken Young, who speculates that maybe Luongo gets an extension because there's no longer a mandatory retirement age in BC. 65 is out. But here's a tweet from Sean Bishop. You let it slip a while back that you had a deal lined up for Roberto Luongo with a team that had to move another player. His question is, the trade that you alluded to as being in place this season, is it still in play at any point?
Well, I'm not sure. The landscape changes all the time, and players are getting hurt, and teams are either struggling or doing better than perhaps they may have thought. So in this business, the landscape changes every 12 hours, and you talk to teams all the time, and whether that deal is there or not down the road, I don't know.
Before we get off your goaltending then, we'll leave it at this. Were you close to a deal?
Yeah, we were, but it was in a salary cap world, it's contingent on lots of different things, and oftentimes you may have to take a player that you don't really want to take, and that can be a deal breaker for you. So you just have to try and do the best you can, and things ebb and flow in that as well. And so there's lots of changes that take place all the time.
And a guy like Corey coming in, you know he wants to get the net as well. What did you think of his game tonight, and a statement game against the defending Stanley Cup champions too?
Well, he was great, but he had a little trouble on the dump ins on a couple of occasions, but he was very solid. He competed better tonight too than the last couple outings. So we know what we have in him. He's a great young goalie, and he's only going to get better as he gets more comfortable in the league. So he's a big part of this team, and we'll just see how the future goes.
I misspoke myself when I said we were going to leave it at that about the goaltending. I want to get this tweet in from Carl. His address is @Viking62. Ask Mike Gillis this: why not cut all the BS and admit that Vancouver's best chance at the Cup this year is by keeping Schneider and Strombo in 1 year?
Well, that may be our best chance. It may be our best opportunity to win the Stanley Cup with both of them here. And the issue for us is, can we improve in another area? And if we can improve in another area, we're going to look at it.
Well, you look at down your lineup with Kessler gone. Obviously, it changes that second line dramatically. What did you think of, a tough task, as as a player, putting a guy who's typically a winger at center in Mason Raymond, and going up against a tough group of centermen on the other side? What did you think of his game tonight?
I thought it was good. I thought everyone's game was a little bit better tonight, but Mason, it'll be a learning process for him, and he's got good speed. He's got a great shot. And if he competes like he did tonight, he's got an opportunity to play in that role for a little bit and do well. But it's all about competition in this league now. You look at the puck battles, and you look at the way teams play.
And there were some good ones tonight.
Yeah, there were really good ones. Yeah. And you've got to compete for the puck all night long, all over the ice. And if you don't do that, you're going to be either in a tie game or lose a game. So once our compete level got higher tonight, we knew we had an opportunity to win the game.
All right, lots more up for discussion as we continue with General Manager Mike Gillis, including the status of Manny Malhotra, who is no longer playing for the Canucks. We'll continue on After Hours after this. In Vancouver tonight at Rogers Arena, the Canucks roll 5-2 over the Stanley Cup champion LA Kings as we continue on After Hours with President and GM Mike Gillis. Kevin Bieksa just went by and called this the worst After Hours he's ever seen. How many years has he got left on his deal?
Too many for him to be saying that.
The decision, Mike, to have Manny Malhotra stop playing for his own safety begs a simple question. Why was he allowed to play all of last season and 9 games of this year with the eye injury? What changed?
Well, nothing changed, but nothing got better. And as we moved along in the process, we had a lot more information, a lot more data about what was happening, and there was some hope that there would be adaptability and an opportunity for things to improve. And last year at the end of the season, I had a challenging conversation with Manny about his safety and how we felt about it, and he asked to have the summer to train because he didn't have the summer before because of the procedures he had to go through. And he's a great person. He's a wonderful member of this team, and we felt that we were obligated to give him that opportunity to train. And I was going to give him 10 games, and we and then evaluate things. And some things happened in those 10 games where we just weren't comfortable with him being able to protect himself in certain situations. So it was a really hard thing to do, but he's got a long life to live, and I'm completely comfortable with what we had to do, and I would do it again.
If he came to you and said that I want an opportunity to play somewhere else, so I want to try to go and play, what would your response be to that?
No.
No?
We have a responsibility, and I think now that we know so much about head injuries that we didn't know before. Yep. And we're moving down a path where we're learning even more about it. But when you have a player at this level who's vulnerable out there, someone has to do something. And I used the analogy earlier today that if your friend is drinking and driving, what do? Yeah.
Take the keys.
Take the keys. So, in this case, we felt really strongly that Manny was in a situation where he couldn't protect himself like other players out on the ice, and I wasn't prepared to live with that risk any longer.
Just so we're clear, he has not asked to be waived or traded, is he?
No.
So he remains on IR.
Yes.
And we conclude with this on the Manny Malhotra topic. He will never again play for the Vancouver Canucks?
No, he won't. I just don't feel like, if we're acting responsibly, that we would put any player out on the ice. And his injury is different than anybody else. It's a different type of injury than any other kind of normal injury a hockey player would have. And we are subject to a lot of variables with this injury. And but I've made it clear to him that he's not playing here.
Okay, we move on. Your first year on the job here in Vancouver, I recall you expressing publicly being somewhat puzzled, mystified, I guess we could say, over how quick people adopted, and I think you included the media in this, the sky is falling attitude. After 5 years, almost 5 years on the job, heading up a franchise that's been trying to win the Stanley Cup for 43 years, do you understand it more now?
No, I don't. I mean, we've had a lot of success the last 5 years without winning the Stanley Cup. That's the one thing we haven't accomplished. And we have a good team here. We try our hardest to make sure our fans are entertained, and our record speaks for itself over the last 5 seasons, including playoffs. So it does baffle me sometimes how quick people are to condemn certain members of the team and members of the organization. And if I was a fan here, I'd be pretty happy with what I've seen the last 5 years.
But Mike, isn't that how the pendulum of opinion swings in every NHL city, in particular those in Canada?
Perhaps, but I think the fact that this team hasn't won, it's more pronounced here, and we don't have a history where we can display a Stanley Cup victory, and until that happens, we're going to have these pendulum swings. I think they're a little greater than everywhere else.
Well, I think when you look forward too, is it becomes so much more challenging in the salary cap world, and with this cap changing so much next year. Has your job become that much more difficult too, trying to manage a team under those circumstances?
It's hard to get good players and keep them in this system, and you have to have your guys work with you in order to keep them and be able to have a good team. And we've been very fortunate with Daniel and Henrik. They've led the way, and we've had a lot of guys work with us in order to stay here in Vancouver, so we've been successful in large measure because of that. It's an interesting system. It's going to get more interesting as we move along, and there's a lot of variables involved that you have to be on top of in order to be successful.
Okay, Mike, I think about 90 seconds left, so 2 things we want to address. This is a tweet from Dan. Biggest lesson you've learned since becoming Canucks GM?
Don't sweat the small stuff. You have to be prepared to look at the big picture all the time, and not get too wound up in the minutiae of what people may be saying or writing or doing. You just have to focus on your team. You have to focus on your people here, and you've got to work hard every day to try and get the best out of them.
Leave the small stuff to the fans and the media.
I was going to say, don't come on after hours.
Yeah.
That's
Don't come on this first lesson. Listen, the hot topic this week is the Ryan O'Reilly offer sheet in Calgary, being put in that awful position of, almost, if it had gone through, of having to give up the draft picks and the player. Here's a tweet from somebody called Deer. The handle is Deer Raja or something. Ask Gillis if he understood that if Ryan O'Reilly were to sign an offer sheet that he'd have to clear waivers. Did you know that?
Yes.
So you were aware of it? And that's the league regulation.
Well, he played games in Europe, and so we were aware of it. Jay Feaster is a really good general manager with lots of experience, and there's so many moving parts in this. There's a new agreement out there, and it's hard to stay on top of all of these different types of things. So, it's an unfortunate situation, but the result's there.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you guys.
Mike Gillis, President and General Manager of the Vancouver Canucks, our guest on After Hours.